Welcome to the Sonoran Sky Podcast. I am your host, meteorologist Pete Mangione. We have a guest today for the podcast that you may recognize. Ladies and gentlemen, Holly Bock.
Hello.
Great
Hi.
to have you.
Happy to be here. It's weird to be on this side of the microphone.
It is. And how was the traffic coming up to the studio? Any elevator traffic, anything slow you down, or did you make it up okay?
You know, I ran into Brad Denny in the elevator, so that slowed me down. Because, of course, we had to start talking, right?
That's always a good thing.
Just kidding. It was quick, easy. Happy to be here.
All right. So the reason we're having you on the podcast is you've held two different positions here at Arizona's Family. You've been a full-time reporter.
Mm-hmm.
You're now forecasting on a full-time basis. So, you know, we're going to get into kind of the differences between those two jobs. But before we do that, tell us how you started out working in news. Did you want to do that from being a little kid?
I did. And it was more so the news aspect, I think, which is interesting that I'm now in this position here. Because I would tell you now, I would think roles would have been reversed when I was young. But my parents always said, grew up in LA. And anytime I guess I'd see a fire truck or a cop, they say I would roll my window down and I would be like, what's going on? What's happening? What's happening? Like the classic looky-loo. So my parents from like age 6 were like, Holly Bock, Channel 4. Like they would always say that. They still do. They just said I was always so curious and I wanted to know what was going on. What were people doing? Why are there sirens going? And so I guess I had that in me since I was a little kid. I was always curious. And so, you know, I grew up in high school and there was someone Chris Schabel worked at KTLA, and he was from my hometown.
So is this LA area we're talking about?
Yep. Yeah. And so my mom somehow connected with him, and he brought me in one day to his studio. KTLA is Channel 5, and I remember thinking, like, oh, my gosh, this is exactly what I want to do. And I think at that age, I was high school, so maybe like 14, 15. So since then, I was like, okay, this is it. This is the career for me, and I mean, hey, it's worked out, right?
I would say it has worked out. So from ASU, what was did you go into broadcast immediately after going to Arizona State, which is where you went, right? Want to make sure I have that right.
Sun Devils all the way.
Okay.
Yep. So went to ASU. I actually didn't want to go to ASU. I toured a bunch of schools in the South. I thought I wanted to go to Alabama, LSU. I toured Tennessee. That's where I wanted to go. Don't know why. Toured all of those, and then my mom was like, we have to tour ASU. First of all, it's the closest to home, so we would love if you were close to home, but they have one of the best journalism schools in the country. And I was like, I don't know, it's so close to home. Everyone from my hometown comes to Arizona. I guess we'll go. And so I came here and I was like, okay, wait, this place is pretty cool. Phoenix is awesome, very similar to LA, but has its own perks too. So came to ASU, studied broadcast journalism, and at that time, they didn't have kind of like the combined meteorology program at the same time. So I was downtown at Cronkite, and then I would go to Tempe for my meteorology classes. So studied both of those at the same time, and then graduated and went to El Paso, Texas.
So that was your first TV job.
Yeah.
And what was your shift? What did you do there?
So that's the world where it introduced me to doing both, the hybrid type of schedule where I was reporting 3 days a week and then I was doing weather on the weekends. It was interesting and it was a unique opportunity because a lot of people either go directly into I'm going to be a reporter and I'm going to anchor, or I'm going to go directly into weather. And I loved getting the opportunity to do both. It was, very unique and has its own sets of challenges and perks too. And you kind of get to show your own personality in weather, but then I loved reporting too. So I hung on to that for 3 years when I lived in Texas, and then a job opened in Phoenix. So I went back to straight reporting, MMJ, which that's a world of its own.
Okay, so for people that don't know what that means,
Yes.
Explain what you do as an MMJ. And did you start MMJing here in Phoenix, or was that El Paso, or both?
Both.
Yep.
When I moved here to Phoenix, the job was MMJ, which stands for Multimedia Journalist. That means you go out and you, first of all, pitch all your own story ideas. You set up all your own interviews. You go out. You're a one-man band. You do everything on your own. You have your own camera. You shoot the interviews. You edit it. You put your piece together, and then you somehow make it on air. MMJs are they have superpowers, I feel, because you're doing so many jobs all by yourself. So did that, and then one of the bosses here, who I love deeply, Rudy, he isn't here anymore, but he came up to me one day and he was like, we have a position here and we think you'd be perfect at it. and we want you to try it. And it is back to my old ropes of hybrid, MMJ, and weekend weather. So I went for it and got the position, and I've loved it. And I loved getting to do, again, both at the same time.
And so let's first talk about a day in the life of a reporter.
Mm-hmm.
What are you thinking about when you start your day of how things are going to go? How do you kind of plan out your story?
Mm-hmm. It's so different. And that's why I loved the opportunity to do both. Because as a reporter, you wake up and kind of the first thing on your mind is like, what's going on in the world? What am I going to pitch in the pitch meeting today? Who am I going to reach out to? That's just, I think, how most reporters think. And your day, you can't really plan it because you're pitching all these ideas and you have no idea what the manager is going to pick for your story of the day. Or they could give you something completely random like, hey, you're going down to Tucson or you're going up to Flagstaff. You know, your day could change in an instant. So that is kind of the big difference, I would say, of like the reporting career and role versus weather. Reporting is just a little more go on your feet. Deadlines are kind of hard. And then weather has its own, world too. So it was a big switch, going from 3 days a week in that mindset. And then on the weekend, getting to be a little bit more of myself and giving people the forecast.
So now let's talk about weather. How does your day start? What are the first things you do when you're getting ready to do the weather that day?
Yeah, it's different because I think your mindset shifts to like weather impacts people's day-to-day every single day. And so you look not only here in Arizona, but if people are traveling, like, for the holidays, how is that going to affect them? I think it's a lot less, I will say, taxing maybe in some ways because reporting, you are often, talking to families who may have just lost someone, or you're really trying to get answers from an official who doesn't want to give you answers. And so you're constantly on this like go, and it can be really tough sometimes. I think taxing could be a good word. It takes a toll on you sometimes when you're interviewing families who have gone through their worst day. And so weather, I think, gives a different opportunity where I kind of look at it more as like, well, we're preparing people. We're letting them know what are the changes coming up. It's a little more, I wouldn't say lax, but it is a little more, you're able to kind of plan ahead and kind of know what your day is going to look like and plan the story you want to tell people that day. And so I think it's been a really good fit and a really good transition for me.
And so to that point, would you say doing the weather, you're generally in more control of the story from start to finish, whereas in reporting, you might go out for an interview, right?
Yeah.
And you might not get the soundbite you think you're going to get, and then that's going to change the way you tell it.
Yeah, or maybe halfway through the day, the person you went to go interview is like, never mind, don't want to do it, and then you're restarting. I think whether it's a little easier to come in for your shift, you already kind of know what's going to go on for that day. And, we talk, you, me, Scene, Royal, we're kind of gathering, how do we want to tell the weather story today? And you kind of have a better plan, and it's my own plan that I can take control of, opposed to a million other outside things that could really change throughout the day. And in reporting schedules, that's one of the biggest things. You don't even know some days if you're going to be near a bathroom, if you have food. So now I'm like, I get to eat lunch, and that's nice. I get to have dinner. So, I think you're in more control and, a little more stability day to day.
Have you, when you were reporting, were you ever standing out in the rain?
Oh, yeah.
And then the meteorologist would toss to you like, hey, tell us about the rain. And you'd be thinking, hey, listen, I'm the one standing in it.
Yeah.
You meteorologists and forecasters, you're inside. But now you're the one inside.
I know. It is a weird shift, and I think I do miss that from time to time. Like during the monsoon, this was an interesting year for me because now I'm full-time weather, and I'm like, wait, I feel like I should be out there. Or I feel like I should be offering to the bosses, like, do you want me to go? And that's kind of the mindset shift, right? Of like, I had that still reporter in me of like, should I go out and about? Like, should I be out in the field? And I love doing that. And, we do get the opportunity, our weather team to still go out and do these shoots or go out in the elements sometimes. And I love that. I think it's unique that we get to, do that so often, but I also think it's good. We're in the studio all the time telling people what's going on. So get us out there sometimes and show them. And I like getting to do that still.
And what do you think about, I mean, one of the benefits I think about working on the weather team is we have a huge, deeply experienced weather team.
Yes.
And we're around each other a lot.
Yeah.
As a reporter, you're in the meeting, but then you're kind of on your own for the day, right? Talk about what it's like being able to lean on, our weather team, which has so much great experience on board.
Well, I credit where I even am and the knowledge I have to Royal, Norman. Everything I feel like that has got me to this point, he's been part of that process. Learning from him is probably better than a textbook or a teacher, right? I think if someone's been in this industry for the time that he has and has been in so many different places, it's been the best to learn from him. And I think anyone would say the same thing. But we're learning daily from each other, right? Last week you showed me something that I'm like, oh, that was great to learn from, or I'll help Scene with something, or I think it's great that we have the team we do. We all sit in that little area together and we get to talk, and it helps that we're all friends too.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel like that knowledge really takes you so far, because especially people like Scene, they've been in this market for quite some time. April, Ian, Paul, it's unique, and it's really nice to get to learn from them day to day. I feel like every single day, we're learning something new. And
you find it easier to do weather after living here a few years, because now you're probably more familiar with the geography. Like,
Totally.
hey, that wash, when it rains over there, that's going to be a problem. You're not going to learn that in a textbook.
No, not at all. And that's something that I think, yes, comes with time in the position that we're in. And then comes from, like I said, people like Royal or Scene, who are like, this flooded 6 years ago. And maybe I would have known that if I Googled it, and it took me some time to research that. But they know these things like the back of their hand. And so I think it's very helpful to have people like them who you can learn from, and that don't make you feel dumb for asking questions, right? Because we're fairly newer to this market. And when I came in, I was just reporting. But I think that helped too, because when you're reporting, you're out in who knows where for the day. So I would go to all these different places, and I learned about the state by just getting out and getting to do that too.
Are there days where you miss reporting?
All the time.
Days?
Yeah. It's nice to get to meet people and share their stories. And, I think sometimes being a reporter is almost like therapy for some families. The things you hear and the things you see, you're in these moments with them that are sometimes, like I said, some of their worst days, or things that they really need help with, and you're able to be the voice for the voiceless. I loved that part of reporting. Weather, I love getting to, I think, be more of myself. There would be often times where people would be like, you're so serious during the week, and then we see you on the weekend and you're like this happy person. Like, how do you do both? And I think weather is a little bit more of my vibe, and I get to be a little bit more of myself, smile a little bit more. Some reporting shifts, a lot of them are just more serious and, news focused. And so I think weather has been a nice treat, and it's fun. We get to, we have our days where we're on air for hours and hours, especially during the monsoon. And, we have our hard days with that. But I love the days where it's also, we get to go out into the community, and maybe the weather's a little bit more quiet. So we get to go to a food drive and things, especially around the holidays. We still get to go out into the community, and I really love that part of it too.
When you're in the community or just out in the public in general, because people will ask me this, do they ask you, so do you just read the weather off the prompter?
Right. Even my family sometimes is like, you're saying that on your own? And I'm like, yeah, there's no prompter. And I love that part about getting to do the forecast. It's all our own. It's all what we want to say and what we feel like is best. It's our own story. And the way I think of it is like, well, how would your friend want to hear the weather? So I just say it how I would say it to my friends or to my family. No teleprompter. And I think people are shocked by that sometimes.
Because, you're having to look at what you're pointing at. That would be impossible, right?
Yeah. And sometimes, too, I've brought my family and friends in on the green screen, and they're like, wait, what? Like, how does this work? That's always fun. And then you're also kind of like a graphics artist, because we make all of our own graphics beforehand. Maybe that's something people don't realize is, the stories may be a little bit easier for us to ad-lib because we're the ones making these graphics. So I know what's coming up next. I know what's going on air. I make all of these myself. So I think that's maybe why it's a little bit easier for us to understand why there's no teleprompter, no script. But it is always interesting because people are like, how do you remember that? I'm like, well, It just happens.
It's just natural.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about your experience when you worked the weekend morning shift. It's a shift I've also worked.
Yeah.
And that was almost the combination, especially on Saturdays, they would usually send you live to some events.
Yep.
With the iPad, which meant you were kind of doing two jobs at once. You were the
Totally.
reporter covering the live event and doing the weather, and you seem to be very good at doing both. Are you naturally a good multitasker? Like, how did you approach those kind of shifts?
Yeah, I mean, I love multitasking. I sometimes say I think it's like toxic that I feed off of such a deadline, maybe. But I love multitasking, and in those moments, I think you're at an event and it's fun, and you're getting the word out about something. And so that's kind of the reporter angle of it, right? As you get to interview people and you're highlighting an event, and then at the same time you're going over to the iPad and you're like, okay, let me give you the forecast as well. Those are the shifts I love. I really enjoy getting to go out and, do both. I know there are some people who prefer one or prefer the other. And for me, it's definitely the hybrid of both. I loved getting to do that.
It's so interesting how we're all wired differently, because when I did the shift, I did like being at the event and getting out in the community, but I did find it a struggle to, interview someone about the specifics of an event, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to focus on a wind advisory.
Yeah.
I found my brain would feel very scrambled, but maybe it's just I'm not as good of a multitasker, but it sounds like you loved doing kind of both at the same time.
I did, and I felt like, it's like back to my roots with the reporting, right? Like you still are getting to do that side of interviewing people, but you're right. It's kind of a funny shift, because then you're like, wait, I'm also here for the weather and for the forecast. So you definitely have to think kind of how you're going to make that work. But yeah, I think it's great we get to do both. After a few days in the studio or a few weeks, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to get out and talk to some people and do some live shots. And it's great that we get to do both.
I know when I started working at my first TV job in Idaho, it surprised me how much time I had to devote to being an artist.
Yeah.
Making graphics look good, simple, and pretty, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Did it surprise you how much time that you have to put into that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because people, like even my family, will ask, you get in at 1, what are you doing for the 3 hours until you're on air? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing? There's so much work that we have to do. But maybe people, don't realize that, and that's okay. But we do our web stories. We're writing a weather story to send out to all the producers. We're making graphics, and that can take up to an hour sometimes, especially if you're trying to be creative with what you got. You're doing social media posts. So you're doing so much work behind the scenes that maybe people don't realize. And all of that is done by ourselves. Like Royal is making probably graphics downstairs right now that we can later take and kind of make them our own, or like you said, make them look pretty. So you do kind of have to think that way of how is this going to look best too? Like I have a story to tell here, and a lot of that is visual for other people. So yeah, I didn't really know we would be such artists with that, but I love getting to do that. That's something I really enjoyed, putting graphics together and kind of making them my own. That's, I think, one of the things that I may be a little bit better at, I would say.
Oh, I'll just say, you're very good at it, because I may work on a graphic which has certain weather stats on it. I'll have a certain font, a certain background, and then you'll take it, and your background and font looks so much better. And then I just end up stealing most of your graphics.
Yeah, and I love that about us. We all steal each other's graphics and make them our own. That's I feel a very team-based effort. But yeah, I really love getting to do that, and maybe I have an eye for it that I didn't realize. But yeah, sometimes Royal will be like, "Oh, that looks really good," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks." Like it's nice to get to play around and mess with that. It's like another job within our job. So.
And having an eye for that is so important, because we have such a limited time to capture viewers' attention, right? With social media, so you want something to be very simple, and you want it to pop on the screen.
Yeah, and I didn't realize maybe it would be as hard as it is, but you want to make sure that everything, like we've been told recently, it has to be clean and precise and bold and easy to understand, and that's been a learning curve within itself too, is making all these new graphics and trying to switch it up. And for the days where it's sunny and 75 here in Arizona, like how are we going to make this the best story that we can and the most visually appealing? And I think sometimes being a reporter helps me with that, because I can understand how to tell a good story and how people want to hear the message. So I think that's been beneficial to be able to do both.
And, thinking about this reporting versus weather storytelling.
Yeah.
I see a similarity in, as a reporter, you might want your first shot to be the best one in the story.
Yeah.
Is that also how you approach weather? Like, I want my first graphic or my second to really capture something important to keep them interested.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. And I guess every day could be different. Sometimes I like to tell the weather story in like a chronological order. So like what's happening tonight, tomorrow morning, tomorrow, the weekend. But then also sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I should start with the weekend because that's my best looking graphic and probably what more people are talking about anyway. So I think you can go back and forth where, yes, as a reporter, it's a little more structured. You kind of know how you should start the story off. And usually, yes, it's with the most compelling element that you have. That's a lot more structured, I think. I think with weather, we could be a little more, lax with the way we want to go about our story versus maybe how you want to go about the weather story. And I think that's what makes it great and what makes it unique, is we all tell the same story, but in a million different ways. And so I like that part of it too.
For sure. And have you noticed things change? Like, for instance, when you were in El Paso, did they used to tell you things like, well, don't put up what's happening for the weekend until the end to keep them hooked? And now, as we're currently set up, our managers don't mind if we talk about that first. Have you noticed those changes?
Yeah, a lot of changes. And I wonder if it's also just the evolution of how people are watching TV and the way they want to get their information. But yeah, I think, and maybe that's most bosses, I don't know, in different spots who have different ideas of how they want your weather story to go. But that's what I like about here. Like I said, we all get to kind of mess around with our weather the way we want to. And I think we all do a really good job of getting the story out there and getting to do it in our own way. But yeah, and I'm trying to think back. I mean, in El Paso, it was, like I said, it was a weekend shift when I was on the weather. I was such a baby. I think I was 22, fresh out of college.
Such a baby.
A little youngin'. And I was still learning. I just think I remember learning from our meteorologist then, Sandra, who was amazing. And I learned a lot of graphic help from her. And I think I've brought that here maybe. But yeah, I mean, I credit everything I know to Royal Norman. And all of the rest of you guys too.
Great.
But
I mean, I think, so we have, for people that don't know, we have a group weather text chain.
Yes.
Which
the
I
group
love.
Chat. I love the group chat.
It's sometimes not about weather, but sometimes it gets super nerdy. Like, have you seen the high res?
Yep.
Or, hey, the European model, I think, is drinking today. It seems to be,
the GFS is crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think, that's what I tell my parents is like, it's such a good group of people that we have here because yes, we're serious and we want to do the best job that we can. But at the same time, we're able to have fun together and joke together. And Ian will send something funny in the group chat and that lightens the mood completely when we're talking about weather models that are going crazy. So yeah, it's good to have the group we have here. I think it's a good one.
Well, Holly Bock, is there anything else you want to add?
Oh my gosh.
There's no pressure to.
I know. I'm always the one asking people that question. I don't think so, Pete. I mean, you got it down pat. I think, I've been fortunate to have the option to do a hybrid of both careers. And I'm just grateful to be here in the position I am right now and getting to tell people the weather and the forecast. And I love it. So I'm looking forward to doing more out in the field, community-based events too. And then it's always fun to be here in the studio with all of you guys too.
All right. Holly Bock, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And that is it for this week's episode of the Sonoran Sky Podcast.